lead us in that.
Lisa's got a nice flag too.
Oh yeah, she's got a bigger flag.
Okay, John and Ken can lead us jointly.
It's a bigger
Pledge
flag.
allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Do we have any public comment that is not related to tonight's discussion topic? Okay. Hearing none. We'll go to item 4, which is the public hearing. I'm going to ask Mary to present to us the subject of the discussion, the redistricting based on 2020 census data, and the first public hearing on the proposal to adjust the boundaries of the zones.
Mr. Chair,
you want to fill us in?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you have to open the public.
No,
meeting.
that's next.
Yeah.
That's B. First, we get the presentation. Do I open it now, Pat? Or do I wait till?
No, the way it's been structured is I think Mary's going to kick us off, and then we're going to have a presentation, then you'll open the public hearing, accept public comments, close public hearing, and then board deliberation and comments.
Thank you.
I apologize, Chair.
Okay, Mary.
Okay, so on February 11th, 2020, the board adopted Ordinance 2020-01, approving the change in moving from at-large to zone-based elections pursuant to the federal and California Voting Rights Acts. So at that time, the board selected a final map of the 5 election zones in the district, which was drawn utilizing the assistance of a demographer and incorporating the 2010 census. So the election code provides for redrawing of the maps with each 10-year census in order for the zones to continue to be substantially equal in population. So if the deviation of population varies by more than 10%, the zones must be redrawn in consideration of the new census, or that being 2020. So the district's demographer, redistricting partners, reviewed the district's current map and found that the population deviations now vary more than 10%. So consequently, the district must adjust the zone boundaries given the updated 2020 census. The process for the redrawing the maps involves at least 2 public hearings. The first one that we're holding this evening. The first public hearing is informational and provides the opportunity for the board to receive comments regarding the communities of interest. So first then, I would like to introduce Joe Armenta from Redistricting Partners, the district's demographer, who will walk us through the redistricting process and options for maps. So with that, Joe, I will share my screen in your presentation.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Mary. And yeah, my name is Joe Armenta. I am the redistricting manager working with you all. I'm kind of your shaman through the spiritual experience that is redistricting. I know you all have done this relatively recently. However, we're just going to go through some of the ground rules to redistricting, just give a lay of the land so we all are on the same page about this, both for you all, but also, for the public. There's a public record of it as well. And we go to the next slide, Mary. There we go. And just to walk you through where we're going with this. So we're just going to start off with broad generic, what is redistricting? We'll go through some of the traditional principles that jurisdictions hold up. We'll go over some of the laws out there with regards to the Fair Maps Act and then the state and federal Voting Rights Act. Some of these pertain to you, some of them don't, but we're still going to provide a broad overview of them so that you all have the information. We'll also review just the census data, and then we'll finally just go into the draft maps and talk about next steps from there. So next slide, Mary. So what is redistricting? Redistricting is the process of adjusting district lines every 10 years after the release of the US Census. Every 10 years, it's constitutionally mandated that the government go out and count everybody across the United States, and then we readjust the lines. Every jurisdiction does this, from Congress to state legislator all the way down to your water board. There's two important requirements that are laid out by both the Constitution and the US Supreme Court. So the first is equal representation under the 14th Amendment. That's basically how effectively a resident can be advocating for themselves and be represented within a jurisdiction. And then the other principle is one person, one vote, that districts need to be relative equal size. As Mary said, they need to be within 10% of each other. Right now, yours are just are a bit out of that area, but you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that for why that is. But again, the districts need to be relative equal size. So in terms of just traditional redistricting principles, there's a few criteria out there that the courts have upheld. One is that, again, the districts need to be relative equal size, and that needs to be the total amount of people, not just citizens in the area. So the citizenship status doesn't matter. It's just the amount of people in an area as counted by the census. The districts need to be contiguous, so they can't be like separated. You can't have a district all the way up in the north and then it kind of continues down to the south without anything connecting it. They need to have some sort of things connecting all parts of the district. The districts need to be compact too. We're not going to draw like lines all around, all over the place. They need to maintain communities of interest. We'll go into what that is in a minute. And then, you know, they should follow some city, county, and local government lines. At a district this big, there's not a lot of local jurisdictional lines that we can follow, but, you know, just basic areas that are already pre-established. We usually follow those lines. In terms of community of interest, communities of interest are just, you know, groups of like-minded people who can, who want to be together and who can effectively advocate for their representation. For communities of interest, in terms of minority communities, there are a few that are protected under the Voting Rights Act. Those are Latinos, Asians, and African Americans. These groups are considered a community of interest in regards to the Voting Rights Act. But outside of the Voting Rights Act, and we'll go into what this means in a minute, you can't use race as a predominant factor for determining the line. So you can't just be like, hey, I want to make this district 40% Latino simply because I want it to be that. It needs to be in regards to a specific legal criteria that is laid out in the Voting Rights Act. And then outside of that, again, due to the equal protection clause, you can't just draw districts solely with race as the predominant factor for that district being drawn. We can go into the Fair Maps Act. So the Fair Maps Act was recently passed. This is a law that mostly pertains to cities and counties and state districts, but it basically lays out a process for transparency and also just some basic criteria that a jurisdiction should follow. So, you know, these principles laid out in law become best practices for all agencies across the states. And those practices are, you know, the process and transparency. So the reason we're doing this public hearing, the reason that we've laid out this structure is partially to follow some of the guidance from the Fair Maps Act to provide transparency to the public. So this isn't drawn behind closed doors in a smoke-filled cigar room, that we're actually allowing the public to participate in this process. Not using incumbents or candidate residents as the community of interest, you know, solely as the determining factor for drawing lines, and not drawing districts to advantage or disadvantage a political party. These rules don't currently apply to special districts. So the water district is not totally, it's not constricted to these laws outlined by the Fair Maps Act, but they're best practices, and most agencies usually just voluntarily opt into using these principles outlined in the state law. So the Voting Rights Act is federal law that seeks to remedy racial disenfranchisement. It has two sections, one that is active, many jurisdictions use, the other one is inactive. So the active one is majority minority districts. We'll talk about that in a second. The inactive one is pre-clearance. That was a law to where the federal government had oversight ability over jurisdictions that had historically discriminated against communities of color. That one was struck down by the Supreme Court in the last decade. Excuse me. And then there's the California Voting Rights Act. This is the law that has forced a lot of jurisdictions that were at large to go into districted systems, basically systems with districts in them. And basically, the standard for this is just that racially polarized voting exists in any given jurisdiction, and that's basically protected minority groups voting unable to vote for their candidate of choice. I'm sorry, protected minority groups voting for a candidate that is different from the white majority. That's basically what racially polarized voting is. And if that exists within a jurisdiction, it usually flips into a district system. And then in terms of the Federal Voting Rights Act, when we're talking about Section 2, what we're talking about is the creation of majority minority districts. And basically, if a district, if an area exhibits certain conditions, it means that a jurisdiction should draw a district in a certain way. Basically, those characteristics are, is there a minority group that is sufficiently large enough to make up a majority of a district? Is that minority group compact enough? So can it, is it not, it's not spread out throughout the entire area. It's actually like in a geographic area that is compact and that it makes up the majority district, and that area exhibits racially polarized voting. If it meets all those three preconditions, then a jurisdiction has to draw that district. Your jurisdiction, the Coastside Water District, doesn't have those three preconditions, so we don't believe the Section 2 applies to, the water district. And then, where are we at with this one? Determine Section 2. Yeah, so again, we already kind of went over this. Again, we don't believe that this applies to the Coastside Water District. So in terms of the census data, this is, again, a count that takes place every 10 years. It's a count of where people were at on April 1st, 2020. And it's required to be released to all jurisdictions by that date. However, due to COVID, there were delays in the census. We didn't get it until September 20th. It impacted a lot of jurisdictions across the state, although we have all the data now and it shouldn't impact the timeline for you all. So the census numbers came out in September. We have them available, and that's what we're using to draw your districts. And there's also just different data sets that we use. So one is the raw data that we get from the census. Another one is the American Community Survey, which is an average over the last 5 years of people filling out a survey about who they are, and then the census kind of aggregating that data to determine what types of people live where. And so a lot of the information about ethnicity and about race and about income and things like that we get from the American Community Survey. It gets merged together. The American Community Survey isn't the actual, isn't an actual physical number or the actual number of people that live in the area. It's just an estimate of the type of people that live in a specific area. And then we're using the actual census numbers to determine the amount of people that live in the area. Additionally, with state law, there is prison population reallocation, which basically takes people who are incarcerated and reassigns them to their last known address. That's kind of a civil rights measure that was passed on the state level. But those are basically the data sets that we're using for redistricting here. So that's a lot of information, but with that, we're going to jump into the draft lines. I guess I can hold questions until the end here. So we'll just blow through these drafts right now. These are the current lines that you all have. I'm sure you all are familiar with it. Again, you recently redistricted. Let's go to the next slide, Mary. The thing that we found when we ran this in our system was that the total population deviation was pretty far out of the allowable deviation. So one district is 28.8% overpopulated. Another district is under 14.3% underpopulation. The way we calculate that is basically we take the total number of people in all of the water district, we divide it by the number of districts, so 5. That is the ideal population. And then how much a district goes over that or how much a district goes under that is, how much it deviates. And then basically we take the biggest district and the smallest district and we look at the difference between those districts. And that's how we get the total deviation of a plan. Again, the number that we're shooting for is 10%. You all are at currently 43.1%. With that said, your districts are pretty small. And so, just a change of a couple hundred people can shoot that number up or shoot it down. So that could be a reason why, even after, I guess you were using the 2010 census numbers. So that could be why your population is a little bit out of whack now. Over the last decade, there's an area had more people than it did 10 years ago. So we created some draft maps. I'll walk you through each of them. And then I'm happy to, after this, to zoom in on areas or to zoom out or to, take a closer look at certain districts if you all want to. But I'm just going to give a broad overview of all the districts, all the plans that we came up with so far. So this first one, this is our draft map A. This is basically minimal change. We just adjusted the lines to get you within that allowable deviation. So basically, the basic architecture of all this is pretty much the same as your last map here. We didn't make any significant changes. What we had to do was move some lines again to shrink some districts down. If I remember correctly, it was District 1 that needed to shrink down a little bit. And then District 3 needed to grow a little bit. And so we had to, kind of rearrange some things around, but it's mostly the same structure. We have 2 slides that compare it. These are pretty small, but again, I'm happy to blow these up later. But as you can see, it's relatively the same. You do see District 4 go a little bit more towards the coast, but that's just to pick up an equalized population. I don't think it's a huge populated area. And then that bottom part of District 3 takes in more of District 1 to balance things out. And we can go to the next one. This is more of an overlay of the old plan with the new one. And so basically the colors you're seeing are your current lines, and then the black lines over it are the proposed redistricted lines. So you can kind of just get a sense of where the lines are going. Again, most of the change is in that kind of Southern District 1, Southern District 3, and Northern District 4 area. Total deviation for this plan is at 5.4, so we're under 10%, so that's good. Biggest district is District 3 at 2.9, smallest district negative 2.5 is District 5. And yeah, so that's draft plan A. And again, I can go back to it at the end of this presentation. Draft map B, we were mostly, again, trying to do the least amount of changes, but we did make some changes to the bottom part of, of the water district. I think this was, just an attempt to not make a big skinny line all the way down the bottom. Although, again, we don't have any preferences for any of these maps that are being proposed. We're just showing you different options that we have. So these are the ones right next to each other. Again, most of the difference you'll see in this map from the last one is District 4 doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the water district. It stretches all the way, it stretches to the coast. And basically you're just seeing 5 and 4 stacked on top of each other. And then relatively the same structure as draft map A and the top of the water district. And we can go to the next one. Again, the overlay. 4 and 5 are mostly the difference that you're seeing with this one. And the total deviation for this one is 6.3, so we're under 10%. Again, 3 and 5 are, 3 is the biggest district, 5 is the smallest one. And then we have draft map C. This is, again, just kind of continuing with us stacking the districts and just kind of layering them like a cake just to show you different possibilities out there. So this one, District 3, goes, doesn't kind of snake up into that like top point area. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this, but basically, you know, it maintains just a block by itself rather than going up the central part of the district. So you have 5, 4, and 3 stacked on top of each other. You have 1 as a coastal district, and you have 2 all the way out the top. These are your lines right next to each other. The biggest difference is there's not really an east-west divide, I guess. This is more of districts being stacked on top of each other. We can go to the next one. And you can kind of see the overlay here again. It's not an east-west divide, mostly district extending all the way out from the easternmost part of the district to the coast. And we'll look at the data. Population deviation 5.8%, so we're within the allowable range. And the biggest district is District 4 at 3.1 over, and the smallest district is negative 2.7. And we just have the draft maps again. We can slowly go through them. Yeah, this is A, that's B. And then we have C after this. And that's all I got for you in terms of just laying out. Oh, no, there's the next steps. So this is our meeting right now. I'm happy to get feedback from you all. If you want major, any revisions to the map, I'm happy to take them now. Usually you want to post these maps online and then 7 days later, at least 7 days later, take the vote on it. So you want to have kind of a 7-day leeway on publishing these before you take the final vote on it. But these are the first draft map presentation. You'll all be voting for it at some point in February. And then the final deadline to adopt it is April 17th, 2022. And with that, I am happy to take questions or to walk through specifics on the map.
If I can just bring up one thing, and I think the big difference between A and B is primarily this, the Moon Ridge neighborhood, which we had in A, our original, our current map, we had that with 4, and the so he has that the same in draft A, and then has that with changed with zone 5 in draft B.
So for purposes of process, Mr. President, I would at this time open the public hearing because I don't think that there's any public present, but officially open the public hearing, ask for any public comments, and then ask your general manager if she's received any written comments, and I think the answer is no. And then once you get through that formality, you can close the public hearing and then go to board comments and questions.
Sounds good. Okay, so without further ado, having item A done, I'm going to open the public hearing at 7:23 p.m. and ask for any public comments at this point. Hearing no member of the public and having none here or no comments received by the general manager, then I will close the public hearing at 7:24 p.m. and then ask for board comments regarding the presentation and the selected and their opinions of what they're seeing. Okay, thank you. So board members, can I have?
I have a comment, if I may, and a question.
Go ahead, Ken.
When I was looking at the 3 different maps, I personally think that map C looks great. And the reason that I like it is I like the fact that the districts are sort of stacked. I don't really like the term district when talking about our voting entity because we are a district. I find it confusing. I wish there was another term that could be selected for that. But what I don't really like in any of them very much is when you go up to 1 and 2 at the northern end of the district, for some reason, 2 always squeaks into the middle of 1. And so I'm just wondering if there's some way, since I like the stacking, the way the stacking looks, is there some way to get rid of that little squeak through? I don't know. Joe, do you see that on your map where the green squeaks through the tan or yellow up at the top?
Yeah, a little like, I kind of see what you're saying there. It's kind of, yeah, for everyone, it's really where the number 2 is, like to the left of that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Other than that, I think C is great, but I don't really like that. I don't understand it. It just seems odd to me, and I haven't put it on the map, like what street that is, or, you know, what are there 3 people that live over in that little peninsula? I don't know.
Yeah, so there's some areas of the map too where you'll see these weird kind of jagged lines. We're using what the census uses, and that's really the only thing we can use, and it's the census block, and that's just kind of how the census block is drawn. So with that little squeak, that's basically what it is, and it might be, you know, just a few houses on a street or something like that, or like a cul-de-sac. And so, you know, that's the line that we can use. And so we can't really change that too, just because we don't, well, the census tells us how many people are in that little area. It doesn't tell us exactly where they live, and we can't split it and like divide the population out because we wouldn't know where exactly every individual actually physically was. So I don't think we can fix that little nudge there, but we can say that I'm looking at it right now. It's contiguous though. And we're just following the census block for that.
Mr. Chair?
John?
Yeah, kind of a general question. After, sorry about that. After the investment the district has made, if there was no major changes, are we still within the letter of the law? I don't know if Joe or Michael could respond to that, because it doesn't seem like we're really over adjusting anything, in my opinion, at the moment. But so it could almost stay the same and we would be within the letter of the law. Is that correct, Michael and Joe?
You would have to make, I mean, I'm obviously, Michael should answer this question. From just looking at it with my experience, you would have to make some changes because you're outside of the allowable deviation.
Yeah.
And so you do have to make a few tweaks to your current lines right now. And our draft map A is kind of the draft map that makes the fewest changes, I think, just mostly to balance out population.
Thank you.
Glenn, any comments, questions?
I thought Ken's comments made a lot of sense. I'm actually really comfortable with either A or C.
Okay. Chris? Chris, your speaker's off.
I think we're just kind of splitting hairs or splitting houses or splitting blocks. I mean, John, I'm with you too. I'm sorry you weren't here when we did this, and it wasn't that long ago. And, you know, Patrick, I'd like to know the enabling legislation and who wrote it and who wrote in the $30,000 bounty to the lawyer who sued us. This is just such a money-making ploy. And we're just pissing away our ratepayers' money here on a bullshit exercise. And it's coming out of the pockets of our ratepayers. And somebody, you know, an attorney in Southern California is getting wealthy off this. So we're in the weeds here. We're splitting hairs. So I'm fine with all the maps.
Okay, so.
Would you like me to respond?
I would.
Yeah,
Because
no, yeah,
I think
I'm just
yeah.
waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's why. I think we should write a letter. We should write, if that legislator is still in Sacramento, I think we should write him a letter.
So, so I just wanted to clarify that the process we're going through right now is a completely different process than the one we went through just a couple of years ago. And the one we went through just a couple of years ago was because of a lawyer who wrote the district a letter alleging that we were in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. And that triggered a process that we went through, which ultimately resulted in us adopting the Blue 2 map. The process that we're going through now is one that every local agency needs to.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Every 10 years.
It's a 10-year adjustment. I get all that. It's not lost.
It's based on the new census data, and what Joe and redistricting partners have determined is that there's deviations that are greater than what's allowed under the redistricting laws, and so therefore we need to adjust the boundaries a little bit, and that's what these 3 maps do.
No, I totally get that. And Joe, congratulations. You're in a mandated field. This is a job for life.
So,
and I would like to know who the legislator was who did write that crappy bill.
we,
I'd have to look that up. I don't know.
required for us to do, and as a result of the census, as I understand it. And at the outset, the initial one was not our favorite thing, and we did it. And we did it well, I thought. We put together a map, as I remember, that really seemed to meet the objectives of the law and of the requirement, which was the one that we have is now our current map. And as I reviewed that against the 3 options, well, I understand Ken's opinion and see his point of view. It was my feeling that the current A and the Plan A, Draft A, are probably similar and different enough to make me feel comfortable with A as the selected one that I would like to see going forward, as opposed to either of the other 2, because I still think that it allows us to meet the requirements as laid out in the laws and the Voting Rights Act to put together communities of interest and to meet the specific requirements of the percentage deviation. And this A is the best of the 3 in terms of deviation. It's the lowest deviation of the 3. And I feel that it meets spec, and would say that I would vote for that one, you know, as my favorite at this point. So that's where my head's at. The only question I had was on number 5, where we had that little outlier piece down there in San Gregorio, Pescadero, that's now in 5, which is interesting because it was more agricultural, I understand it, as a piece of land. And there are no people that live there, as I understand. And so we just could have gone with 3, as it used to be, basically. So I don't know if that's something we want to do, but it's fine with me this way, since it's really a quiescent piece of property, as it turned out. So that's where my head's at. Mary?
I was just going to say, I do have some history on that piece.
Okay.
Basically, there's no population in that area, by the way, but it was under ordinance number 11 in 1962. That piece was annexed into the district by, it was the Manzo and Sweeney Ranch, which, and the intention was to build 800 homes and the golf course on that land. And now it's open space land. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate
because I
it.
had some questions on that.
Well, the voters down there won't be too noisy or loud when we pick the map, I guess. So not something we need to be overly concerned about. So those are the views. And what is the process next to do? We have these 3, we've given our opinions. What goes to the next level on February 11th? We haven't come up with any dramatic changes, and we've decided that there's some interest in C, but A is okay with, I think, a number of people here as well, as I get it. So what's on the table at this point? Do we vote on a map, or do we just carry these forward to the next meeting and talk to it again? Or do we take the one we like and present that as our selection and see if any public comment at that point? Pat, I don't know. What do you do?
Yeah, well, my understanding, and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that we need to have a second public hearing.
Right.
So if we can get the count of the days, we can get these posted on the website, but we could have that public hearing as early as our board meeting on February 8th. And at that board meeting, we could have the public hearing, and then you could take a vote.
Yeah, so I'll just chime in. That's exactly right. We do need to have one other public hearing because the law requires us to have at least 2 public hearings. And I'll defer to Joe and the demographers on what feedback he would like to have for tonight. And if we're assuming we're only going to have one more public hearing, whether the board wants to have any lines redrawn, whether it wants to narrow the maps from 3 to some lesser number. And given Joe's experience, what would be most helpful for him as a demographer as he prepares for that next public hearing?
It is mostly up to you all and how you want to advance on this. I've seen jurisdictions that just say, hey, we want to narrow it down to one map. That way it makes our next meeting, just a formality. We just kind of approve that map and move forward. I've seen other jurisdictions just say, hey, we're going to advance all maps. We'll take a closer look at it, and then we'll pass one at the end. It's really what you all are comfortable with. I will say, though, if you do have changes to the map, let me know kind of now so we can get it out there as we can make those changes as quick as possible and get them online. That way we meet the kind of 7-day deadline before voting for a final map.
Ken?
So just to make one more comment on this, the reason that I think C is so much superior to A is that when you look down on the bottom of the map, we've got that funny little piece that sticks out in, I guess it's number 4. This little piece right here that's connected onto number 5. I think in the A map, doesn't it end up not being connected? It's connected again to number 4?
That's Moonridge.
Yeah.
That's Moonridge.
Well, I think it's fine, but I just think it's so crazy. I think it's so much more appropriate joined on to number 5. That's just my feeling. I just don't like it when the sections are separated by physical distance. I think it makes it more difficult for people running for office to canvass, to walk neighborhoods. I remember when Chris Michelson and Jim Larimer walked neighborhoods to get elected. Thank goodness they did it. So I just think that presents a physical barrier. And that's the reason why when I look up at number 1, that little squiggly piece that pops through, I just don't really agree with that. I would like those to not exist as separated by another voting area. That's just my opinion.
Mary, do you have a comment on that? I mean, that's Moonridge, which is what I thought at the time when we first did these was associative with a community of interest, which seemed to fit better with the remainder of 4 than it did with 5. And we were comfortable at that point with that as being the philosophy, even though it's, quote, separated, it is still, along with some of the other things on Main Street, down in that location, part and parcel of a community of interest that we are driving toward as a result of the requirements of the act. So, Mary, do you have a comment?
Yeah, that's my recollection of in working with the demographers is that at that point in time was that piece, with Moonridge identified more with the what would be number 4 versus Ocean Colony. And so that's why it was put there. And I think that was the intention of, 4 being was kind of the main, downtown or central location. 3 being neighborhoods would also identify more with some ag groups. And then 2 being identifying with the El Granada Highlands perspective of the neighborhood, and 1 being, the coastal community. So that's what was represented in my discussions with the demographer back 2 years ago on this.
Joe, did you see any difference in that? I mean, when you looked at this, did that still seem appropriate to you?
That's a kind of more of a community interest in how you all will like this laid out. Population wise, I mean, it mostly the same. I would say in map C, because, we are restructuring that district 4, it makes an impact on the district 3 because district 4 adds, X amount of people. We have to lose X amount of people from the northern part, and 3 takes it in. And then that has an impact on district 1 and district 2. So, you see it changes the ripple effect of that throughout the map in Plan C.
And didn't
Bob, I have a question.
If I could just chime in on what Mary was saying, because that was my recollection, having gone through the process as well. And I think it's reflected in and maybe Joe can chime in on this because I'm diving into the details. When you look at the Latino population and compare Plan A with Plan C, and you look at 4 and 5, it significantly changes the percentage of the Latino population, where it got to 40% in Plan A for Zone 4, and then that drops down to 27%, and then it increases Zone 5 as well. So I don't know if that's a factor for the board. I think it was the last time, but I just wanted to point that out when you look at the minority populations.
Well, that was the point of this exercise. And, I personally would defer to the demographer that he made his best attempt to address the spirit in which we are bound to operate here. So I would leave that up to Joe. As opposed to us, bringing out our pencils.
Other comments from Director? Look, what I would like to propose is...
Bob, can I ask a question? Bob, between A and C, what's the impact on the current board seats between A and C? Is there any impact on the board seats?
Yes. There is. Two board directors are in the same...
Or 1.
For which map? For C or A?
C. For C.
For C?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But, Glenn, I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
Nope, that answered my question.
My proposal and view at this point is since we only have 3, is to make this easy next time at the next meeting and the next public hearing and select one of these as our favored map. I would propose A because I didn't hear much in the way of a pushback except some advice and desire to see a different structure to make some better things up using map C. I understand that. But the other folks seem to be comfortable with A as an option. And I don't know if, we can make a straw vote or raise our hands or something, say, hey, I'll go with A because A seems okay to me, or we want to do something different. I just don't, I'm just trying to get to some kind of a direction here right now. John.
Yes, sir. Sure. I would be in support of moving A forward as a draft plan for the next meeting regarding this issue.
I thought we had to put them up on the webpage for 7 days and let people comment and then revisit them.
Pat, is that how it works?
Can I make a quick note? Well, I'll answer that, but I also have a quick note on just map before you take formal motions on anything. In terms of the draft map, you only have to put, it only relates to, you only have to put up one draft map, but you can put up multiple if you would like. But it's mostly if you make changes to the draft map, it needs to be up for 7 days before you can take a final vote on it.
Oh, okay, it's been up already.
Right.
So I would propose we put A on.
And then
the website
before the formal motion, just so I can, there's just one small technicality I wanted to point out. Mary, can you go to the map A? And you'll see this in almost in all the drafts we proposed to you. I forgot to mention this. Just the full map. There's a small little area. Can you go to the one with just the 2 slides back? Yeah, there's a small little area above the 3 that's like it's in green right now. That's supposed to be in red. It's just a census block that basically if we click on that census block, it includes areas to the like far north in the district, so all the way into that like notch and 2. And that's because it's part of a bigger census block, just the way your water district cuts into the census block. It includes that like area all the way in the south with one that's like giant all the way in the north. And like nobody lives in that area. We're just, we can't separate it out in our computer program, but basically after you finalize the map, we'll be able to talk to the registrar and say like, hey, this small little area that has nobody in it, that belongs in District 3, and the rest just don't include the like northern area that's all the way to the north of District 2.
So you can't show it.
I can't show it on the maps right now. If I go into my computer program, you'll see what I'm saying.
Okay, so, but it's not a significant issue and it doesn't do anything. It's like the one down at 5 on the bottom. It doesn't have anything in it.
It's unpopulated area.
We can talk to it obviously at the meeting. I would propose that do we have to make a motion to pick one, or we just say we prefer to leave that A and put it on our website as our selected draft and talk to it again at the next board meeting? Is that acceptable to the directors?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would take a formal action on
No, I'm not.
any map forward. I would just have a discussion about which map or maps the board would like to see at the next public hearing. And then
Okay, I'd like to see map A, plan A.
Thank you for that, Patrick. I think I would be in favor of moving draft plan A forward to the next meeting without a motion being made, just as a recommendation.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I like a map drawn by a neutral third party without our intervention. So I'm fine with that.
Glenn?
Yeah, I'm good. I would put A and C forward so that we offer choice to the community and give things for people to comment on. But I'm okay but I like A. I think A is fine.
And Ken?
A was my first choice. I just don't like the graphics.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Given that, and Mary, I guess, and Joe, you have your instructions here, I guess, to move forward. Joe, is that correct? You have what you need?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And
So
we'll finalize this, and Mary will put the thing online for 7 days, and we'll be ready for the February meeting. Correct?
Just to clarify and summarize, what I think I heard was that we were going to go forward for the public hearing with one map A.
Yes,
Okay, just wanted to be sure I heard that correctly.
I think that's what we agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, correct.
One more question quick for Joe, Mr. Chair. So we're still within the limits of some minor adjustment with A. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
So it's not like
you can make minor adjustments. If you make those, let me know as soon as possible. So
of course, yeah. But at the moment, we're still within the letter of the law by reviewing this here tonight.
And if during the week that the map is available for public review again and comments come into Mary, they would need to be discussed at the board meeting on the 11th, is that correct? Next board meeting?
Yeah.
As part of our discussion before adoption of the plan or a plan, right? Okay, so it sounds like a plan.
If I can make a comment,
Sure.
I will post, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can post the interactive map on the website, or can I post a link? Or at least give it so that it's available if you want to see the streets?
That's correct. Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah, I'll send you the link for that, Mary, after this. And then, yeah, feel free to do what you want with it.
Okay.
That's the interactive map of Plan A.
Right. So that, yeah, so I know, so if you want, if Director Mueller and any other directors, if you want to look at the streets, you can go ahead and look at them. You know,
Can you forward that to us, Mary?
Yeah, I'll
Can
do
we
that
get that
too.
link as well, please?
I'm happy to drop it in the chat right now too. And then I'll send it to Mary as well.
Okay. Okay, Mary, you can bring down the screen. Maybe we can close the meeting up, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a plan, and we're gonna do as you must with the plan, Joe and Mary, and then we will then plan to see it on the board agenda for the 11th of February. 8th of February, right?
Yeah.
On the 8th. All righty, so we've made our time here, and I think we have a good choice. And I think we appreciate the efforts of Joe in looking at this and clarifying this and showing us that we were in pretty good repair the first time around, actually, now that I think about it. And we did a pretty good job up then, and it's not deviated much from what we had hoped to achieve early on. And so I want to thank everybody for their hard work at that point, and also this point for reviewing and coming up with our approach. Anything else before we take that?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Lisa for stepping in tonight to assist us to put this all
Yeah,
together.
Lisa. Thanks, Lisa.
So welcome and thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
All right, it looks good to see you all, and hang in, stay safe, and we'll see you again in about 2 weeks. All right. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Good job.
Meeting was adjourned at 7:53.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.